in the case of the client that we just talked about, she had incredible benefits, not only within her own sort of mind and body, but also socially in her family and with friends and other people. So it was amazing for her. Yeah, and I'll just say this, like we don't have to jump right to that if we don't want. If there's other sort of like questions or conversation that we want to have around this, I think we're trying to be more conversational and deal with like questions and interactions as we go along here. So I'm happy to do that along the way as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and this has got to be a huge question that people have. And the answer is, yeah, if you're prone to it, you're more likely to, if you've had it once, you're more likely to have it again. The science is pretty clear about that. It doesn't mean you always will get it, but you are prone to it. Now, here's something that's really interesting. With the EEG, when we look at a brain during the depressed state in the winter, for someone with seasonal affective disorder, and the same brain, but when they're doing so much better in the summer, there are differences. The brain looks a little bit different. Now, there's been research, it's like, okay, but in the summertime, are there ways that we can predict if this person is going to be have a propensity towards SAD? And there are the two main ways that we do it. One is with questionnaires and get to know the person and how do they answer these questionnaires. The second way is by looking at their brain scans, and there are a few things that we'll see that have been identified. One of them is an asymmetry in the frontal lobes. So what that means on the left versus the right frontal lobes, when we see an imbalance. Now, typically we want to see a little bit of an imbalance of about 10%. But when we start to see that get to be a lot bigger, that person's going to be prone to depression, number one. But then number two, there are other markers that we'll see with decrease in some of the other brain waves, theta brain waves and delta brain waves. Now, when we look at those, we can tell with a high certainty. It's about 77%, I think it was, accurate for mild to moderate, and if it's higher, it's like 82% accurate that that person is going to have seasonal affective disorder. Now, you can do the questionnaires to find out, or you can do the brain scan to find out. But what we're finding is if you do both of those, you can really understand a lot better and with more accuracy predict if that person's going to have seasonal affective disorder. So what that tells us is somebody does have a propensity to it. And it's sort of like you know, we might live here and when things get bad, then we'll really start to have those effects of the depression. And it's like, but if this summer I have enough going on to keep me here, we're going to do fine. But once things get me up there, then I'll start to notice. So I think it's important to know that not only are you more likely to get it in the future, well, okay, it's good to know, hey, this is the type of brain that I have. So what can I do about this?
Yeah.
And some of those are pretty simple ideas. Like, I have one client that he's just like, hey, once my wife was diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder, it just sort of clicked. We're like, oh, yeah, that always happens. He's like, we were taking vacations in the summer, like most people. He's like, we just decided, well, why don't we take the vacations now in the winter? And that was like all they needed to change. And then she was just like totally fine. you know? So it was just like, hey, if we time it right and I can get my week away and get the sunlight there, that can be enough to get me through the whole winter without having this like these really low depressed moments. So pretty
Yeah.
pragmatic solution.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the light therapy lamps are really in place to kind of you know, demonstrate similar effects as regular light because we don't have as much of that light in the winter time, right? And so, or people aren't getting it as often because of the certain hours that it's happening in, right? And so, at least here in Calgary, we in the real lowest light point of our time, it's like it's light from 8:45 in the morning till about 4:30 in the afternoon, and those are most people's working hours or some variation of that. And so how much light are we actually getting and out in and taking in? So what light does in when it enters in through our eyes and our skin and everything like that is it gets converted into certain chemicals and hormones, and it helps our whole body regulate our circadian rhythms and all kinds of things. And so one of the things, and I'm not a total expert in this area, but from the little bit that I've read and researched in, is about melatonin production. And so when it's darker, we will produce more melatonin. That's how we sleep at night. That's a natural mechanism for us, our brains to do. But then it's also natural for us to produce more melatonin in darkness because of the winter, lack of winter light, right? And so we need sunlight, and preferably morning sunlight, but at least any time through the day, if you're considering these light lamps and things like that, to help our brains convert certain chemicals to certain things. So and the two that seem to be linked are melatonin and serotonin. Seem to be when we have a good amount of morning or daytime light, we will produce more serotonin and more melatonin at the right time. So later in the evening hours, getting ready to sleep.
You're right. It does seem to be more effective if we do it in the morning, like right when we get up.
Mhm.
Typically, most research is saying 20 to 30 minutes a day can be enough.
Yeah.
Um, Now, it's not just hold your face up to a light. It's got to be a really high intensity light. Okay, so the lights that you're using in your home aren't going to be, one, they're not going to be intense enough, bright enough. Two, um, there's a spectrum of light. So it's like all the different colors of the rainbow within it that make it look like white light. Okay, we want most of those without going into the ultraviolet because that'll burn our skin. So there's the right type of light to do it. It's got to be very bright. And the third thing is you have to be really close, like 30 to 50 centimeters away. Like you have to be really close and on the eyes, on the face, that's where it's really going to be helpful. There's Now speaking of EEG, there was research done that gave people these lights. Now they did it for 2 hours a day. I don't know why they chose that. They did it for 2 hours a day over 10 days. And they monitored not only like their symptoms of depression and stuff like that, they also monitored their EEG, their brain waves. And what they found was after 10 days of doing this in a row, they no longer showed those that propensity that we talked about of the imbalance, the asymmetries in the frontal lobes of alpha brainwaves and the suppression of the other brainwaves. So what it's saying is that 2 hours a day, 10 days in a row, they no longer showed the brain patterns of somebody that would get seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah, not our wheelhouse
Yeah,
really.
you can see the two psychologists sort of freeze up. It's like, we don't make lots of recommendations on medications or dietary things. Um, are you familiar with what they are, Kayla?
But I mean, I have like testimonial type information or like personal information, that kind of thing that I can speak to. But no, I haven't taken a deep dive into like research or talked to a doctor about it or anything like that. So
Well, we can say that there's vitamin B12 and vitamin D and omega 3s. Like we know those ones. But yeah, I'm with Kayla. Like that's not our specialization, so I can't say which brands or at what dosage and those sorts of things. I know there's research there, but it's not top of mind for me.
yeah. I think one thing I always like to talk to like my clients about with respect to any kind of vitamins or supplements is obviously, you know, take advice from other medical professionals too, or naturopaths or whoever they're working with. But certainly I know from my own experience, I generally benefit from a multivitamin and omega B12, like Blake said, and vitamin D. And vitamin D is, there's a lot talked about with vitamin D and seasonal depression because of the whole light therapy component. So people saying things like, you know, if going out in morning light and having more light and all of this impacts depression levels, then and light converts to vitamin D in our bodies, then therefore vitamin D and depression must have a link. And I don't think that clinically studies have really shown that clear of a correlation, but what they have shown is that vitamin D has quite a significant impact on immune function. And so, and then there's sort of links with immune function to mental health and things like that, right? So I think here's one. If we just want to get sick less in the wintertime and feel awful because of that, take higher doses of vitamin D and do your vitamin D consistently. Because if you already have depression or seasonal depression, and then you're getting sick all of the time and having the stress and the difficulty that comes with being sick, you can alleviate at least one of those things a little bit, why not? It doesn't hurt.
We got a new we got a new plant at my house, and the leaves are just like huge, you know? And we got it maybe 2 weeks ago, I think, and it is dying like so fast. Like me and my wife, we don't know plants. So like we've got it, we put it in our house where we thought it looked nice, and it just is like within like 2 weeks, it's like I don't know if it's gonna survive. And my wife, so she looks, Googles it, which we should have done before. Um, and it's just like, oh yeah, it needs more light. And then we sort of look at where we put it, we're like, yeah, it's not gonna get a lot of light there. And it's just, are we that different from plants? Like how different are we from that? Like okay, I don't think, if I'm not getting that much within 2 weeks, I'm just going to shrivel up and die as fast as this plant did. But it definitely affects us.
Mhm. So yeah, so this client is a young adult male who is a high achieving, high performer kind of athlete and had just been struggling in well, with mental health and then in athletics as well. And so came in for a brain scan, and you can see on the left side there, that's the pre-treatment, pre-neurofeedback. We have the circles with the bird's eye view down there of the head, and we go this time all the way from 2 to 4 hertz up to 10 to 12 hertz. So we're just looking at a little bit of a larger range here of brainwave frequency. This is all slow wave in the brain though. So we kind of have the slowest of the slow being the 2 to 4 hertz and the fastest of the slow being the 10 to 12 hertz. And so with with what this client was presenting with, just low mood, low energy, low motivation, could not get out of his own head. And we can see a lot of slow wave happening, right? In that 2 to 4 hertz range, we were in kind of the 15 to, in some cases, 25% range again with those colors there. In the 4 to 6 and 6 to 8 hertz range, there's quite a bit going on, especially at eyes open and task conditions. And then there's tons of frontal alpha in the 10 to 12 hertz range. So there's tons of back brain alpha as well, but that frontal alpha and that asymmetry that Blake spoke about earlier, that's going to be big for when we're considering things like depression and how people are doing. So we developed a treatment plan for him. We did 15 hours of neurofeedback in this case. He has a plan to finish the 20 hours, but he's actually doing so much better that he's off competing again at 15 hours. And that's that right side of the page, that post-treatment side. You can see there significant improvements in all the areas, basically.
Yeah, to me, the big thing standing out there is when you look at 10 to 12 hertz, eyes closed, getting to pinks and whites. So more than 35% of the brainwave activity in that front of the brain is happening in the alpha state. Now, the alpha state it's sort of like the brakes. It's when the brain's just like, oh, I'm not going to be engaging or working hard. It's not so much going into the subconscious and dozing off. It's not so much working hard and accomplishing something productive consciously either. It's just this idling, chill state. We don't want to be seeing a lot of that in the front of the brain. Even if your eyes are closed, we should still be able to think properly. And I don't know who this client is, or other than from what I'm hearing from Kayla right now, I do imagine there would have been a significant amount of brain fog happening going on where it can lead to even confusion. Why did I come into this room again? Why was, forgetting words in sentences, just the brain sluggish and not functioning like we know that it could.
Yeah. 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 And a stuckness, I call it stuckness. It's like that breaks, like you talked about, Blake, right? It's just it's another way of thinking about it is that you're kind of stuck in one gear and one of the lower gears, and you can't kind of get out of that no matter what. No, and I say to people, like, no amount of willpower alone is going to help you through this. Like, this is not you, this is your brain. We need to try to help, redirect it and go straight to the source by doing that with neurofeedback. So yeah, like I said, he completed 15 hours. He's like, I think I'm ready to compete again, which was amazing. And we did another brain map just to see. We wouldn't normally do another brain map until 20 hours, but we thought, hey, if you're going to get back with your athletics and competing, then we may as well try and do another brain map. And it was looking like it was matching what he was feeling, which was a lot more motivation, a lot better mood, a lot more clarity of thinking, and that was really impressive. So,
Now, I think with SAD, there's like not everybody's like, oh my gosh, I'm so depressed, I can't leave my home during the winter. And I think some people are just like, not even recognizing that they're feeling a little bit lower or a little bit down. Um, Kayla, what do you think? Like simple suggestions. So I'm thinking like somebody that's like, I'm not at a place where I feel like I need to dedicate myself to 20 hours of therapy or to go on a medication or something like that. What's just something, Joe Blow could do to just a little bit better through wintertime?
okay, there's a few things. Do you want just one?
Let's
I'm like, which one's the most important? I don't
do a few things. Let's do a few things.
Yeah, yeah. Like, well, one I think is like movement and exercise, blood flow to the brain and helping um, increase that nervous system arousal that's like just really low and in that slow wave zone. We don't have to necessarily do neurofeedback to impact that. We can do a movement, exercise, and certain other activities that are focused on that kind of thing. So that would be important daily, I would
So,
say.
so before you go on to your next one, so you're saying movement, and I've noticed you're using that word strategically instead of exercise. Is that right?
Yeah,
Like, is this to sort of say, hey, it's that easy, just get up and get moving?
yeah, yeah. like a brisk walk for 10 minutes, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, going outside with your kid to make a snowman instead of sending him out on his own for, 15 minutes. Like it doesn't have to be exercise in the traditional way that we think about exercise. Like I got to be in the gym or I got to put on a HIIT workout and do that. It's like it can be so many other movement-based things. The more vigorous our movement and exercise, the more blood flow we're going to get pumping by our heart. Like, right, our heart's going to pump more through our body when we're doing something a little more vigorous. So there is that consideration. But I think if considering that when we're depressed, we have a tendency to slow down, become more sedentary, and become more isolated, a simple activity of just getting moving in general can be the best start. And then you can work towards the more vigorous things later.
Okay, movement. I like that. You've got more.
I do,
Number
but I think
two.
you do too.
Well, I've got my own ideas, but I like hearing yours.
Okay. Well, I think just one more is that on that isolation piece, we can have such a tendency to just disconnect and isolate, maybe get lost in whatever it is, social media or just at home in our kind of like safe place, which is okay, but it's also not going to contribute to lessening the depressive symptoms. We are a social species. We need connection. And so I would say just kind of like assessing where you're at with that and seeing if there's ways to incorporate more social connection in your life and like meaningful social connection if possible, not just like going to the grocery store and saying hi to a stranger. That's nice too, and that's good and that's important, but we need some meaningful social connection with like good, trustworthy friends and family on a regular basis all through the winter, not
Okay.
just for our Christmas
I
parties.
got to piggyback on that one because that was the biggest one that I would have mentioned is social interactions. It gets overlooked, but it's incredibly important. Here's a little strategy that I like, and take it or leave it, whatever. This isn't study. This is just Blake's idea.
Yeah.
I like to give a point system to our social interactions. The lowest level would be, I would say, would be scrolling on social media. There
Mhm.
is some level of social connection there, but that's pretty low. That's pretty rudimentary.
Yeah. And
Once
I would add here like sending memes to people or like sending stuff that you see on
love
social
it.
media to
I
people,
would say
also in a lower
I would say a
category.
notch up is if we are if we will like something it would be another point. A notch up is if we're commenting on something or sharing something ourselves. Next would be if we're a DM or a personal message to somebody reaching out. Okay, that's even better. The next a notch up would be if we're sending like a text to somebody specifically. So then the next up then would be like an email. How about a phone call? How about a personal interaction where we're spending time together? And and if you just sort of and this isn't science again, this is just like Blake's idea. But if we sort of look at these and make a little point system, just think, okay, what am I doing? What can I do to add 1 or 2 points and just take my social interaction up just one little notch here? What that can do for you. And I'll just say my own experience. I was bored one day and just scrolling on my phone, and I said, no, screw, why am I just like this is my cousin. We were best friends growing up, like, and like, we're still cousins, we're still friends. Like, why am I just liking his comment? Why don't I call him up and say, hey, this was awesome? And so that's what I did. And then we chatted for like an hour and a half, and I hung up. I was like, yeah, I feel good right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because we can get so like disconnected but connected to just the media. And well, that could probably be a whole nother talk, social media usage and mental health, right? But yeah, I think like social connection is huge and in person whenever you can, or even on the phone, like you said. Those would be my big two, I think. I mean, I could go on with a few more too, but like those would be the big ones. Besides the social connection, did you have any other ideas about what a person can do just very simplistically in their day to help with the seasonal depression?
Yeah, so if we're looking like super, super simple, like what can I do today to notice a benefit? Because I think even like dietary things and nutrition, there are some things that you'll feel an immediacy to it, but I think a lot of it takes a while. But if
Yeah.
it's like, no, I just want to boost myself just a little bit today. For me, the two big things are a little bit of exercise or even movement. I love that. So simple. Movement and social interaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's one I'll say, and I know this is tough because it's like we sometimes struggle with delayed gratification, or the felt sense of that we're doing is paying off like later instead of sooner. But I have a thought, and this is just to take a page out of your page out of your book, Blake, about this is just a Kayla thing, is like I say the things I'm doing today will show up for me in a week. So the things I'm doing today for exercise and movement will help me feel better. Well, that does actually help feel better right away too. But it's sometimes a delayed effect, right? Or the social commitment thing. It's like sometimes you'll feel really good right after. Sometimes you'll be drained right after. If you have depression and you go and visit with someone for an hour, you might come home and be like, I am wiped. I don't even know if I could do that again if I tried later this day or tomorrow or something like that. But then if you keep up with the consistency of it day to day or week to week, you're going to notice the impacts in a week. So I think that's something to consider here, is like just remind yourself that what I do today is going to show up for me in a week. And then next week rolls around and you'll be like, oh, wow, yeah, all those things I did last week, those little things I did last week are starting to accumulate and starting to show their effect.
So I want to clarify when we're talking social interactions, we're talking positive social interactions. We all know we have people in our lives, and I know as soon as I say this, you're going to start thinking about specific people in your own life. People that are one that I call vampires. They'll just come and just suck the blood out of you and just leave you exhausted. You recover and then they'll come back. Okay. They're vampires. And the others that are black holes, that it just seems like it doesn't matter how much you give and give and give and give, it actually makes no difference.
Yeah.
We need to be aware of these things. Like a vampire, sometimes I'll take a hit, for a friend or family member or even a stranger. Yeah, you know what, this brings me down, but I'll take a hit if this can help you. But let's just be aware of that, especially the black holes, because there's some where it doesn't matter how much and what you're doing and giving, it's not going to make any impact to them. So we just have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Positive social interactions are what we're looking for.
That's a really good point, Blake. And you can even think of it like positive interactions aren't always just um like taking. It's like that give take, and what I'm getting at here is like it just made me think as you were explaining those examples of that. It's like you're always giving to these people who are the vampires and the black holes. It's like give, 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 and like not really get a lot back out of that for yourself. But sometimes giving is a really positive thing, right? Like if you're giving because you're giving time and effort or money or donation or something to those less fortunate, or something that's really meaningful and empowering to someone else, that can be so uplifting. That one client that had the treatment resistant depression, she is had a goal this winter to go and volunteer at the mustard seed because she was like, I want so badly to give in a positive and meaningful way. So again, positive
Yeah,
social
I love that.
interaction.
I
Yeah.
love that. And that her goal is, what can I do to make myself better? It's go volunteer. Um, I do think there's too much focus on self-care.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say don't take care of yourself. Well, of course, but if you want to boost yourself and boost your mood, it's actually more effective to go and help somebody else out than to focus on helping yourself out for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or seek out those positive interactions that make you feel so safe and seen and heard, right?
Yeah, yeah. Find and it rubs off, the sunshiny, positive people. So my advice is find the most happy and outgoing and positive person that you can, and spend as much time with them as they'll allow. It rubs off.
Yeah. And don't be the vampire yourself. No, just kidding.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's their issue. They have to figure out.
Yeah, that's their boundary they can set.
Yeah, so definitely we see I haven't seen any research about SAD and neurofeedback specifically, but what we have seen is a lot of research about neurofeedback and depression generally. We have our own clinics research about phenomenal results of neurofeedback. Plus, we have a lot of anecdotal, like we've seen it happen so many times that it's like, I don't need research to convince me that it's effective. Okay. People try it out, we'll make it happen for you. Absolutely do this. There's right now during January and February, um, we do notice like we're often busier in these months, and that has more to do with people's benefits renewing and stuff like that. But really, people, it's as there's a starts to be a little bit more sunshine in March and April is where people will start to reach out a little bit more and sort of come out of hibernation. Now that is actually the highest amount of suicides happen then. So it's like just as they're getting a little bit of energy. So be watchful for other people is what I would say as well. Especially, yeah, watch out for them now, but there are other dangers when the springtime comes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing I'll just say, because we talked a lot today about things you can do outside of like therapy or neurofeedback, but another thing I'll just, I guess, nudge people on today is there is no harm in coming in for a brain map and just seeing what's going on and talking with one of us about a possible plan and engaging the process, even if you're only feeling mildly off or mildly low or um, just a little bit not yourself, right? You don't have to hit rock bottom or really, really, really low to need or want or engage in therapy or neurofeedback.
I like that. That's a good point.
Yeah.